Now it's the front page of the Daily Mail today. Economists are warning that Rachel Reeves will have to raise taxes in the autumn to fill a £50 billion hole in the public finances. According to the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, which is a well-thought-of think tank, the Chancellor will have to find the equivalent of adding 5p to income tax to stay afloat by the end of this decade. We now have a deficit of just over £41 billion, so difficult decisions ahead for Rachel Reeves. Now, she's got her fiscal rules. It looks like, if there are rules, they were made to be broken, Daryl.
She's in a sticky spot to a degree of her own making, really, yeah, because of these fiscal rules. And actually, she was warned a bit during the election. There were lots of voices, even within her own camp, who were saying, you know, actually, you've probably got the political capital here and the political goodwill at that time to maybe loosen them slightly. Spooked as they were, though, by what happened with Liz Truss. It was clearly, like, you know, they were clearly so conscious coming into that election and coming into government that they didn't want to run on the pound, they didn't want the gilt markets to be spooked, and they didn't want to replicate what happened with Liz Truss.
It was a Truss Labour with the economy situation.
That's quite right. Yes, exactly. And I think that you know, I wonder if there's one thing that's kind of missing, and maybe she sort of has this in her toolbox. Which is to sort of I don't know if there's a possibility that she sort of makes an argument about a tax contribution. I think it's likely there'll be something like a wealth tax in there. If there's an argument that she can make about that being an investment from the wealthiest, you know, let's resuscitate the economy, resuscitate the country, and you will benefit. You know, you as a wealthy person will benefit from that in the long run.
The problem is with that, Daryl, I'm sure, Carol, you might agree with this, is that eventually you end up running out of other people's money to spend, and if you're very wealthy, you just disappear. And we've had the highest number of non-doms. You might not like the ultra-rich not being taxed, but if they're not here, they don't pay anything.
I like you quoting Mrs Thatcher there, invoking Thatcher. I mean, the thing is, whatever promises she makes about hitting the rich, we're not going to believe her, because we know Labour is the party. It employs the politics of envy. You know, but, you know, now we've discovered Rachel Reeves actually has got a talent. She has turned what she said was a 22 billion black hole, but no one ever believed her, into a 50 billion black hole. Smart. It takes a real unusual person to do that. It is incredible to me how this woman is still in a job. She clearly doesn't know what she's doing. Every economic analyst is saying where she's going, what she's doing is wrong. And now it's not just going to be the rich that are hit. It's going to be the middle-income people in this country. They're not rich. These are people who are earning what seems to be on the surface decent money, but if they live in London, they've got 2 kids, they've got a house, it's not big money.
We should talk about that, because the tax rise that's being proposed, right, Carol's right about this, and it's not just Carol saying it, it's a very respected think tank. Professor Millard has come out with his view that in 29-30 it'll be around £41.2 billion. That's 7% of the GDP. That's the sort of deficit that we're working to. I mean, it is going to be passed on not to the ultra-rich, but to most ordinary working people.
And obviously, the key thing about that, though, is it depends what happens to the economy over the course of this Parliament.
It's tanking.
And so, well, it's not. No, it isn't tanking. We just had the third. We just had the third highest.
We know it's tanking.
We just had the third highest. We just had the third fastest growth in the G7. It isn't by any stretch of the imagination. Wait a minute. Let me this point. Because it isn't by any stretch of the imagination going gangbusters, but it isn't necessarily tanking. That isn't an accurate description. And I suppose the argument that I sort of make about making a contribution here, about resuscitating the economy, is that you cannot. Anybody who's run a business or even managed a household.
Has Rachel Reeves run a business?
Or I don't think she has. But the country isn't a business.
Has anybody in the Labour cabinet run a business?
The country, I don't know the answer to that question. But the country isn't a business. It's obviously it runs in a different way, and it runs in not in the interest of shareholders, but in the interest of people. But just let me one key point, which is that if you invest, you speculate to accumulate, and you get a return on that investment. So there is a path available here that if we do make a capital investment, that will kickstart the economy.
Posh Keynesian economics.
And we'll get a growth.
Help us out. No,
we'll get growth.
Investment is growth, but where's that investment coming from unless you've got the money in the first place?
Well, that's the point. You know, every single thing she's done is wrong. You said we were just declared the third fastest growing economy in the G7. We were the fastest growing economy in the G7 when she took over the job a year ago. And since then, she's done everything to take that away. You know, no one believes Rachel Reeves anymore. No one believes in her anymore. That is more to the point. And the markets certainly don't believe in her.
That's not true.
That is true.
Because the markets were spooked at the prospect of her losing her job, if you remember.
No, they weren't spooked at the prospect of losing her job. They were spooked at the prospect that she was losing, it looked like she was losing her mind, sitting there weeping like a baby in Parliament. That is a terrible show for any Chancellor. That shows a Chancellor.
I think the criticism is fair, but just to be clear,
before we move on to the next story,
with
prediction from both of you. Do you think that Rachel Reeves will be Chancellor in a year's time? Darryl, yes or no?
Yes, I think so. Just because they're intrinsically... Starmer and Reeves are intrinsically linked in this.
Carol, what do you reckon? Yes or no?
Sadly, I think yes, but for the simple reason that if he sacks her, he's going to have to take the blame for what's happened because he's been part of it all.
Well, on to another...